Hello and welcome to Diecast Restos. I'm Jason and this is a Siku V295 Maserati Mistral. These castings were produced between 1968 and 1974. All Siku models came in this light blue shade, though identical bronze models were produced by Miniaturas Rey in Brazil. The wheels could also vary on the German-made cars. This one is in fairly good nick, with most of its paint surviving. It does have a bent axle though. Here's a matching model Mistral in mint condition. And this is the real car, looking a lot better than its 1 in 60 replica, I think. I'm afraid to say this is a bit of a miss from Siku. The arches are far too big for the wheels. It wasn't improved by the later, larger printed wheels it received either. I'm also not a huge fan of the grille and headlights attachment, as good a solution as this piece is. I think too much focus is drawn to the large grille section, which is a darker obscured opening on the real car. I personally think Lone Star did a far better job on their Mistral. I've got one of those ready to restore actually, though I am on the lookout for a repro window piece for that. The Flyer's wheels fit and thus suit it more than the Siku, plus it has the added bonus of an opening hood. The headlights were taken care of with silver trim, something the Siku Mistral lacks. While the tail lights are plastic forming part of the interior on the Siku car, they are far too low. These look better cast in on the Lone Star. That's probably enough Siku bashing for now. You may be wondering why bother with this casting if you hate it so much. Well, I think every casting, good or bad, inaccurate or otherwise, deserves a chance. And I think it's useful to compare castings from very different manufacturers, particularly when Lone Star was slated for so many of theirs. Anyway, Maserati launched the Mistral in 1963 at the Turin Auto Show. The body was designed by Pietro Frua, who was also the designer of the 1965-73 AC car that bore his name, the AC Frua. The two cars are occasionally confused as they share many styling cues. The Mistral was the replacement for the outgoing 3500 GT, which had been the company's first successful attempt at series production. Its body was built by Maggiora of Turin, and its Mistral name comes from a strong, cold, northwesterly wind in southern France, the first of a number of Maseratis to be named after a wind. It was the last Maserati to utilise their twin-spark double overhead cam straight 6, which had been fitted to the Formula 1 World Championship winning 250F. That car won 8 Grand Prix between 1954 and 1960, with the title coming in 1957 at the hands of the great Juan Manuel Fangio. 3 different displacements were available in the Mistral. There was the 3500cc producing 235 brake horsepower, the 3700cc producing 245 bhp, and the 4000cc producing 265 bhp. Another more unusual option from 1967 was the material the body was constructed from. It had been aluminium up to this point, but a steel construction arrived that year, though it isn't known how many of each were built. It was equipped with a 5-speed ZF gearbox, all-round disc brakes, and all came on Barani wire wheels. A total of 953 Mistrals were made. Of these, 828 were coupes, while the remaining 125 were Spiders. Only the Spiders received the 3500 engine unit. Production of the Mistral's successor had commenced in 1967. The Ghibli overlapped the Mistral for 3 years before it was finally discontinued in 1970. To recreate the original blue the Siku Mistral wore, I'm rather aptly using Tamiya's TS10 French blue. It's not quite as rich as the former by a touch, but it'll do. The separate doors are coated, while the base also received the same colour. I hammer the bent axle so that it is straight once more before I turn to my rotary tool and grinding stone attachment to remove any of the surface rust. I then coat the wheels in Citadel Gloss Nuln Oil. I really like these earlier Siku wheel moulds, which don't have any print or trim on them. Next, I rub some Autosol metal polish on the grille and rear bumper attachments, and again use my rotary tool to buff them out. While I may not be a fan of this grille and headlight arrangement, I am a fan of its detail. It's quite inventive to have these as separate pieces from the body or base in this manner. However, it is a bit of a pain to reassemble the car using them. Next, we move on to giving the transparency a light polishing, first with Polywatch Scratch Remover. The window piece was in reasonable condition to start off with few marks to it visible. It's then dunked in Astonish Wood floor polish to make it really pop. It wouldn't be a Diecast Restos video without an appearance from a Molotow chrome pen, so it goes on in microscopic quantities to the axle ends. And with the 2 coats of French Blue dry, all painted parts are coated in clear lacquer. As I begin reassembly, I need to squeeze these axle retaining suspension pieces back onto the base. Otherwise, here are all of the rest of the parts that make up the Siku Mistral. I first slot on those metal pieces that make up the grille and headlights and the rear bumper. I set this base segment down while I reassemble the body portion. Into this first goes the window piece. Following that is the red plastic steering wheel and dashboard piece that Siku so often left as a separate mould to the rest of the interior. I then balance the doors in place where they are retained by a small cast metal support. The main interior piece secures the doors at the opposing end. I now grab that interior and need to align it so that the doors fit within it. I gently tweak and adjust each door so they sit as they should and open and close effectively. I then struggle to manoeuvre it all in order to connect it up to the base, which of course has its own loose segments. But these satisfying sounds tell me it's now done. So here's a reminder then how our V295 Siku Maserati Mistral looked earlier on. The model wasn't in a dreadful state, suffering only a bent rear axle, slightly patchy paint, and some dull metalwork on the grille, bumpers and headlights. Sadly not one of the best Siku castings, it does however offer a great comparison piece to Lone Star's far better Mistral when I get the windscreen for that. But here's the bit we all came for. Under these lights, it looks like the French Blue really is a nice match to the Siku factory offering. That grille and headlight piece is polished out notably better, and vastly improved is the window piece. I hadn't realised quite how bad it was previously. I have straightened out the bent axle, then washed the plastic wheels in Citadel before giving those axle ends the tiniest touch of chrome. So while not an outstanding casting, this particular one is much improved with a satisfying restoration. If you're looking forward to seeing it up against the Lone Star Mistral, drop a comment and leave your thoughts about the casting. Please be sure to like the video for the purposes of increasing the video's reach. All likes and subscribes are much appreciated. And why not get your name up in lights with a Patreon or YouTube membership? But anyway, all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.